Researchers think that an almost century-old vaccine may hold the key to treating, even reversing, type 1 diabetes. The drug is called BCG and has been used to treat tuberculosis for decades. Dr. Denise Faustman is recruiting 150 long-term patients to participate in a clinical trial to test the vaccine.
We saw early signs that even at low doses of this vaccine, the bad white blood cells that were killing the pancreas were killed, and also the good white blood cells that quiet down type 1 diabetes were upregulated.
Jennifer Sullivan was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 15. She has managed the disease for 30 years using insulin to control her blood sugar. Although Sullivan doesn't qualify for this part of the trial, she says a treatment like this could calm her fears about living with diabetes.
The risk of complications like blindness, amputation, kidney disease, heart disease, not seeing my son grow up.
She calls the study the most exciting of her lifetime and hopes for a chance to participate in a future round.
And while type 1 diabetes is typically diagnosed in childhood, there are other childhood diseases and illnesses that your children should be protected from at a young age. Illnesses like measles, mumps is another one. Rubella is one that you have to be careful of. Children are given the MMR vaccine to protect them against all three.
They should also receive vaccines to protect them from diphtheria, as well as tetanus and pertussis, also known as whooping cough. Those three diseases are protected with a 3-in-1 shot called DTaP.
Now, other vaccinations protect against varicella, that's better known as chicken pox, also polio. It's also recommended that some children receive a yearly flu vaccine. But not all childhood diseases can be prevented with a vaccine. Fifth disease is especially common in kids between the ages of 5 and 15. It's actually a viral illness that most kids recover from quickly without complications. But fifth disease could be a huge concern for many expectant mothers, and here's why.
Alina Berkowitz's two boys are getting over fifth disease. The red rashes that come with the disease go away on their own, but a school nurse alerted Berkowitz to a bigger risk.
She knew that I was pregnant and said, you need to go call your doctor right away.
As this virus can cross the placenta and infect the baby's bone marrow, or the cells that create our red blood cells, and cause a severe form of anemia. That, if left untreated, can lead to either a stillbirth or miscarriage.
Jessica Cantu says it's important for expectant mothers, especially those fewer than 20 weeks pregnant, to be alert.
Really, anybody could be exposed to this virus, and so if you are made aware of a recent exposure, to let your obstetrician know so that further evaluation can be planned for.
Berkowitz, who was infected, sees a specialist twice a week. They're keeping a close eye on her baby's health because, thankfully, a school nurse spoke up.
I definitely want as many women to know as possible.
Now, as you just heard, fifth disease produces a distinctive red rash on the face that spreads to the trunk, the arms, and the legs. But before his rash, a child can have a low-grade fever and headache and even mild cold-like symptoms. There is so much that you've got to think about when you have a child, or even when you're expecting. But what if that decision-making also had to come down to how you were going to have a child?
Well, for many people who have trouble conceiving, the suggestion of IVF is nothing new. But what if I told you there is a way to not only create lives from thousands of miles away, but to save lives too? Reporter Kaylee O'Kelly has that story.
Cade Trebun's life started in a petri dish. For 7 years, he was in a frozen chamber like this one before Dallas residents Christy and Mike Trebun decided to wake him up. 9 months later, their family had grown by one.
He just came out and he cried for a second, and then he just looked around at everything, was looking at everybody, and the nurses are like, oh, you're an old soul. And we're like, you have no idea.
Cade was a frozen embryo the Trebuns adopted from a donor in Oregon.
It allowed us to experience pregnancy, have all legal precedents in our favor.
3 more children followed from 7 adopted embryos from the same donor. Gage is their only biological son. The other side of the story is on the other side of town. Melissa and Mike Eagleton of Keller had 14 embryos left over after an IVF treatment.
We couldn't destroy them. They're kids.
A moral dilemma for them and donating to research was not an option.
They may be frozen cells to some people, but for us, that is a child.
There are up to 600,000 frozen embryos in labs like these across the country. And after a lengthy selection process, organizations like Nightlight Christian Adoptions pair donors and recipients, and they consider everything from socioeconomic backgrounds to ethnicity.
It's kind of like Match.com.
The Eggletons donated all 14 embryos to a family in California. That family now has one daughter and another is on the way. 1 in 5 American couples suffer from infertility, and treatment can be expensive and taxing. That's why Dr. Kevin Duty at the Center for Assisted Reproduction says embryo donation is becoming more popular.
Sometimes more successful than it would be trying to use their own eggs or own sperm or both.
And Texas is at the forefront on laws dealing with embryo donation and adoption.
In Texas, the birth mother is the legal mother, and the husband of the legal mother is the father, except in specific arrangements of gestational carrier surrogacy.
Embryo adoption may not be for everyone. Some parents may have concerns about carrying someone else's baby. But for the Treybuns, it didn't matter then.
You know, the moment he's born, and I just look at him, I'm like, this was my son.
And it certainly doesn't matter now.
According to the Embryo Adoption Awareness Center, all 3 Delmarva states, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia, have clinics that identify themselves as having an embryo donation program. As for adoption, there is one agency name on the site, but only in Virginia. And for a list of the clinics and agencies, visit our website, WBOC.com, and click on our picture at the top of the page.
Wow. Well, once your family is established, your focus turns to protecting them. And there's some new state-of-the-art technology that aims to do just that when you're on the road. Up next on DelmarvaLife, we get a hands-on look at some of these features and see how they're giving drivers peace of mind.
You want to protect your pets, too, when you're in the car. We'll share the results from a very unique crash test. They just may prompt you to think twice about how you travel with Fifi and Fido.
But first, since we've been talking a lot about babies, let's focus now on something that affects many adults: acne. Dr. Oz has more on how to prevent it.
Hi, I'm Dr. Oz. Acne is the most common skin disorder in the U.S. Teens aren't the only ones who get it. Pimples can pop up at almost any age. To prevent blemishes, choose skincare products wisely. Look for words like oil-free and non-comedogenic on the labels. If you can't get your acne to disappear, you can always talk to a dermatologist.